Hey guys, Mike here. So today's cult classic review is 1981's Excalibur, starring Nigel Terry as King Arthur. In Excalibur, Merlin the Magician helps King Arthur unite Britain and create the Knights of the Round Table at Castle Camelot, though evil forces conspire to break this peace. And so we have Excalibur. So guys, this is another movie in this series, and before watching and reviewing it today, I had not seen it before, and to be honest, I don't think I'd actually heard of this one either, because honestly, there have been so many different King Arthur stories that I've seen or haven't seen, that eventually they all just kind of get muddled into one. And honestly, going into this one, I really just thought this was just going to be another telling of the same story that I've heard for so many years now. But honestly, I was going to be a bit forgiving of this one, seeing as this one is nearly 40 years old, and is probably one of the first tellings of this story. So, what do I think of Excalibur? I do have to admit, it did take quite a long time for me to get invested in this story. Well, maybe invested's not the right word. It did take me a while to not want to turn this film off. Because really, nothing was screaming, this is a great King Arthur story. Because right away, and for pretty much most of the movie, the effects are really dated, and most of the acting is just atrocious in this. Not everyone was terrible in this, though the people who I didn't think were terrible, I probably had a bit of bias towards them because I quite like the actors. Like Patrick Stewart, for one, I mean, I've just got such a bias towards the guy because I really like him as an actor. And though he's not exactly doing anything different from anything else, he's just Patrick Stewart, so naturally he's always a win. But honestly, the person who was just really terrible in this was the lead, Nigel Terry. Now, he wasn't bad for the entire movie. It's just for pretty much the first scenes that he's in when he's really young. Honestly, his first couple of scenes in this were just atrocious to watch. It's gotta be one of the most wooden and bland performances I've ever seen in a film. Nothing about this character screamed captivating or inspiring hero. I know that was kind of the point of his character at the start, where he's supposed to have no confidence and not really be much of a leader, then he comes into his own element and starts to become a leader. But I might have been rooting for his character a bit more if his performance wasn't just so terrible. Like I said, it did get better as the movie went on, but not really all that much better that I could say it was a good performance. And as well, there were just so many characters in this. And to be honest, it kind of became a bit difficult to track who everyone was, because they do these massive time jumps and everyone would have more facial hair or they'd be played by different people, and it was nearly impossible to figure out who was who. Honestly, really, the only person who I knew who they were right from the start to right to the end was Merlin, because he didn't change appearance or change actor at all, so it was really easy to keep track of who he was. But to be honest, I didn't really like any of these characters, so I wasn't really going out of my way to figure out who everyone was anyway. To be honest, there were just so many times in this where I just thought this would work so much better if it was a comedy, I think. But every time the movie tried to be funny, it was just so painful. And there were just quite a few points in this where they just came up with the most contrived and lazy reasons to keep the story moving forward. They pretty much get to the point where they're at peace, everyone's happy, and everything's looking up for them. And I was just thinking, how's this story going to actually move forward? And it basically just boiled down to King Arthur's best friend suddenly is in love with his wife. Even though it didn't look like that he showed any kind of affection for her, except for the fact that he said that he loved her because King Arthur loved her, and he would do anything to protect her. Other than that, it didn't really seem like he had any feelings towards her. Then all of a sudden, he is in love with her. And then things start to escalate from there till they get to the point where everything's in tatters. And then King Arthur sends the knights out to find the Holy Grail because finding the Grail will bring peace to the land or something. I don't know, they didn't really explain it all that well, or maybe they did and I just really wasn't paying attention because this story was losing me quickly. But then, one of the most anticlimactic things in the entire film came with King Arthur's son, because they built this character up to be like the ultimate badass, the Kingslayer, the one who will rule the land, and then their fight lasts all of maybe 5 seconds because it's literally just stab, stab, done. I know they probably didn't have the biggest budget and the technology today is so much better than it was back then, but honestly, you could have got a couple more swings in there and made the fight a little bit more interesting to watch. But no, they just went down the route of stab, stab, done. But in all fairness, when I actually do think back to the actual layout, structure, and probably the script of this film, it does sound really interesting. There's just so much going on, so many different subplots, and when they all come together, it is quite satisfying. The only problem is the execution is just so terrible. Honestly, if you wrote all this down, it would probably be one of the best King Arthur stories ever made, but because of the way it was actually presented, I just couldn't get invested in any of it. I didn't like any of the characters, the pacing was terrible, and just really nothing about this just held my attention. I can see why people would think this is a cult classic, but honestly, I've seen so many different King Arthur stories in my life that this one didn't really offer anything new for me, and it just didn't stand out to me in the slightest. So guys, would I consider Excalibur a personal cult classic, and would I recommend that you guys should see it? Honestly, thinking back to this film, it isn't exactly as terrible as I thought it was, but by no means would I consider this a good film. It didn't really offer enough to stand out from the pack of other King Arthur movies, and at the end of the day, I just really was bored with this one. And I would definitely not consider this one as a personal cult classic, and I wouldn't even say this is one of the better movies in this cult classic series. But would I recommend that you guys should see it? Honestly, no. I wouldn't recommend seeing this movie. Honestly, I'd rather watch Guy Ritchie's King Arthur movie than watch this one again. Because even though Guy Ritchie's King Arthur movie is by no means a good film, I at least wasn't bored with that one. In all fairness, Excalibur isn't a bad film, and if you do want to check it out, I won't say that this is a completely terrible movie that you should never see. It's just that I wouldn't personally recommend this one because there are better King Arthur movies out there than this one. Okay guys, that's my cult classic review of Excalibur. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever you think, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!